Over a long millennium leading up to Hastings in 1066, the British Isles were successfully invaded a total of 5 times. Before that first incursion in 55 BC, the islands belonged to the Celts, a tribal and decentralized people who had been there for centuries, minding their own business, which consisted mainly of mining tin and other metals, a little infighting here and there, and painting themselves blue. Remember when I said successfully invaded? I might have exaggerated a tad. That first time, in 55 and 54 BC, was mostly a publicity stunt. Julius Caesar crossed the Channel twice. The first time he brought 2 legions, no cavalry, got his ships wrecked in a storm and left after 3 weeks. The second time, he managed a few skirmishes and took some hostages before running back to the continent before winter. Back in Rome, the Senate awarded him a supplicatio, basically 20 days of public celebration for his, achievement. He had, after all, crossed the ocean. The island stayed Celtic for another 100 years. The next Roman ruler to stroll across the Channel was a bit more desperate and meant business. Emperor Claudius needed a win, and Britain was the perfect target. Exotic, achievable, spectacular. For the next 3.5 centuries, Rome held on to Britain, with a few uprisings here and there. Go watch our video on Boudica. And slowly, Rome transformed the island in its image. The Romans pushed north, conquering tribe after tribe, until they hit the Scottish Highlands. The terrain was brutal, the tribes wouldn't stop fighting, and the return on investment was terrible. So Emperor Hadrian drew a line, a 73-mile wall across the entire width of the island. Everything south of it, Roman. Everything north, not worth the trouble. At its height, Roman Britain was a province like any other. Roads, bathhouses, markets, mosaics. A civilization transplanted. By the time the last Roman troops were pulled back to the continent to fight off the barbarians, it wasn't just an army leaving. It was an entire civilization walking away. Britain was left half Roman, half Celtic, and completely defenseless. With the Romans gone, local rulers started hiring Germanic mercenaries from across the North Sea to fight their neighboring tribes. Not the best move. The Germanic tribes came, fought, and decided they'd rather not leave after all. Saxons and Angles settled in to stay. What started as a mercenary hire ended up a proper invasion. Over the next century, they pushed the Celts to the edges, the Western Hills, Cornwall, Scotland, and across the sea to Brittany. They renamed the island after themselves, Angleland, England. And they called the natives Welsh, meaning foreigners. The natives. Bit of irony for you right there. The Saxons had about 200 years of calm, before they in turn got a taste of their own medicine. In 793, Viking longships appeared off the coast of Northumbria. They raided the monastery at Lindisfarne, rich, undefended, right on the water. They took everything and left. Then they came back, and eventually they stopped leaving. By the 860s, a massive Danish army had conquered most of England. Northumbria, East Anglia, Mercia, gone. Only one Saxon kingdom was left standing, Wessex. Its king, Alfred, was driven into hiding in the Somerset marshes. The last Saxon king, alone in a swamp, planning a comeback, and he got one. He defeated the Danes at Edington and negotiated a border. Everything east of it became Danish, the Danelaw. Half of England speaking Norse. Alfred's children and grandchildren spent the next 50 years taking it back. His grandson Athelstan became the first king of a united England. For the first time, the whole island south of the Wall answered to one crown. It didn't last. Within a few generations, Canute, a Danish king, sat on the English throne. When the Danish line died out, the crown passed to Edward, half Norman, raised in exile in Normandy, more French than English. He was weak and he was childless. When he died in January 1066, he left behind no heir, and at least 3 men who thought the throne was theirs. Harold Godwinson, the most powerful earl in England, claimed Edward named him on his deathbed. Harald Hardrada, king of Norway, claimed it through old Viking agreements. And William, Duke of Normandy, claimed Edward promised it to him years ago, and that Harold himself had sworn an oath to support it. For some context, the Normans were actually Vikings who had managed to peel a chunk of northern France off of the French king. They settled it, learned the language. Basically, French-speaking Vikings. So there we were, 3 claimants, 1 throne. Harold struck first. He marched his army north at breakneck speed, 185 miles in 4 days, and caught the Vikings completely off guard at Stamford Bridge. Hardrada was killed. The Viking army was destroyed so thoroughly that the survivors filled only 24 of the 300 ships they came in. 3 days later, the wind changed. William landed in the south. 700 ships, fresh troops, no one to stop him. Harold turned his exhausted army around and marched 250 miles back south. 2 invasions in 3 weeks. The 2 armies met at Hastings. Harold took the high ground and formed a shield wall that held most of the day. But William had cavalry and archers, and Harold had neither. By the time the wall broke and Harold fell, the last successful invasion of the British Isles was over. William replaced the entire Anglo-Saxon aristocracy with his own Normans. French became the language of the court, the law, and the government. English became the language of the peasants, which is why in the field they're called cow and pig, and on the dinner table they're called beef and pork, among other Franco-Latinisms that permeate English to date. 5 invasions, closing with William's a millennium ago. To date, traces of each of them can be seen in the English language itself, like strata in a rock. Since then, the throne has shifted from the Plantagenets to the Tudors, Stuarts, Hanoverians, and the Windsors, but every monarch since Hastings has maintained a blood connection to William. Guess the 5th time was the charm.